another life-funded project, as you can see the logo up there. One would have thought this session has been rather well planned because it all seems to fit together quite well. Let's just go back. There we are. So first of all, Scottish Natural Heritage. I know a number of you are visiting Scotland. You possibly don't know who Scottish Natural Heritage are. We're a government-funded organisation, and we look after the natural heritage of Scotland, which includes things like managing some of the national nature reserves and being responsible for a number of the directives relating to protected areas and so on. And there we are. That's our mission statement, all of nature for all of Scotland. I think that's quite nice because it, more than nice, I mean, it conjures up the idea of people, places, and nature. So it ties together some of the themes that we've been talking about today. Okay, Ecological Life, that's the name of the project that I manage. It's led by Scottish Natural Heritage. And it has this wonderful sort of title in really, for me, it's Eurospeak. It's implementation of integrated habitat networks to improve ecological coherence across the central Scotland green network. We simplify this in our first meeting. We simply call it joining up nature across central Scotland. And that's joining up in more ways than one. It's not just joining up habitats, not just providing greater connectivity to species to go between sites, but also to link up people with biodiversity and with wildlife. And okay, so in a nutshell, the project, it runs for 4 years. We're 1 year in, 3 years to go. 7 partners, SNH, are leading it, and we have a number of partners listed there: RSPB, SEPA, that's Scottish Environment Protection Agency, Scottish Wildlife Trust, BugLife, Butterfly Conservation, and East Ayrshire Coalfield Environment Initiative. We've got £2.3 million to spend. And the overriding imperative is to improve ecological coherence, and I'll come to that in much greater detail as we go forward. But we're also looking to contribute to wider ecosystem services delivery, such things as natural flood management, mitigating diffuse pollution, and providing other socio-economic benefits. And the key thing I'll be speaking to is about this thing called the Ecological Coherence Protocol. This should underpin everything that we do in the project. It's to help us identify the sites that we're going to be working on, but also paradoxically to validate the sites that we've already chosen. And what it does is, through a facilitated process, we've heard about facilitation right earlier, it's about habitat mapping and modelling, bringing science and stakeholders together. And it is about delivery. This project is about delivery on the ground. We've got 9 sites already identified. We're going to look at one of those in some detail, and we still have some to find. And they're characterised by post-industrial activity, mining, canalising of rivers, draining for agriculture, and so on. And it covers 4 very broad habitat types. You can see there peatlands, wetlands, freshwater, and open mosaic habitats. Now, for those of you who don't know, Central Scotland Green Network is it's a planning imperative under the central planning in Scotland. That's the broad area. Have I got a pointer? Edinburgh is just here, and they're the sites that we're working on across the piece. And Central Scotland Green Network itself has a vision. You can see there, by 2050, Central Scotland has been transformed into a place where the environment adds value to the economy and where people's lives are enriched by its qualities. It's very much about people. Ecological coherence. Hands up if that means a lot to you, or anything at all. A few hands up. Good. I was expecting more among you academics. Right, okay, there's a few hands up and some half up. That's great. I'm a project manager. I'm a simple forester, actually. So when I came to this project to manage it, this was anathema to me. It was a real struggle to get to grips with it. I'll come back to that. Just a couple of slides on some of the things we're doing. Peatland restoration, cutting down Sitka on deep peat to restore peatland peat bogs to this sort of quality. habitat improvements on wetlands. That's more about management and keeping the reeds down and allowing greater ingress from reconnecting with the floodplain, with the river. And wetland creation. This is a site which you're going to go very close to if you're on the walk on Wednesday. I don't think you're going to pass it, but it's a quarry that's owned by Tarmac, and we're doing this together with RSPB. So it's very much a blank canvas, but with great potential. And it overlooks the sea. It is a seascape, but I'm going to be talking about another site. Ecological coherence. Okay, so we're a doing project. We have to get stuff done. We have to rely on what's gone before, research, understanding. And S&H had commissioned this report back in 2012 by Roger Catchpole, who some of you may know. And he trawled the academic literature, and he did this piece of work, fairly extensive literature review to determine what ecological coherence meant. And he essentially summarized that it was really a legalistic term that Europe understood, and it applies mainly to sort of Natura sites. But we still had to make sense of it. What does it actually work? How do we apply this? How do we develop a protocol that informs where we actually do work within the project? In that same report, there's a definition. I'll give you the reference to the report later. But in essence, what it means is sites where dispersal, migration, genetic exchange between sites is in place, and that they are resilient to disturbance or damage, natural or man-made, possibly critical areas for rare, threatened and endemic species, and in general, and we always had this actually from Adrian in the previous presentation, more, bigger, better and better connected. So that's really a sort of a very gross summary of what ecological coherence means in the terrestrial context. Equally, coherence, I think if you read the literature and if you read Roger's report, there's a greater emphasis actually on NPAs, on marine protected areas. So I commend that report to you. In order for us to make sense of this, we need to quantify and measure and work out, well, how do we know coherence when we see it? And some of the key variables here that we need to think about and quantify are things like patch size, biological diversity or species richness, connectivity, both functional and structural, the functionality, the ecological functionality of those sites, and the presence of endangered, rare or endemic species. So these are the things that we need to get our heads around. Okay, let me look at an example. Now, back to the Central Scotland Green Network, and right, here we are. We've heard this before, Kinneil Lagoons. And we saw some pictures that David put up this morning. And I'm going to focus on this very much. You'd have thought we'd spoken to each other and arranged this. Well, not quite. It's just fortuitous that we've chosen the same place. So here we are, Grangemouth, which is an oil refinery. Do you know what? It's actually 90 years, not the first oil refinery there was put up 90 years ago. There's been oil refining going on there for a long, long time. There we are. It's all of that area is a site of special scientific interest. It goes on up the Forth. Interestingly, it covers the mudflats, and it's also a special protection area. These lovely interactive maps, you can get these off the Scottish Natural Heritage website. They're all available there. You can muck about with it yourself. You can do all sorts of things and see all sorts of different land cover graphics. So Kinneil Lagoons. This, oops, I'm sorry. Go back.
Too much?
Right. You see over here, this is a landfill site, and this here is a causeway that was built to service the landfill site over there. And there are pipes in here that allow the tidal water to flow in and out. And those lovely pictures of birds that you saw earlier are from nearby this site. That's the lagoon, that's saline mudflats. important for species like knots, dunlin, black-tailed godwit, and there we have the oil refinery right there. So that's the inland side, if you like, and on the other side are these tidal mudflats, and what happens is the water comes in through the pipes at high tide and flows out at low tide, and you have this very protected lagoon area, which is very rare actually on the Forth. Across the way is the 40-year-old Long Annet coal-fired power station, so a very industrially active area. Okay, so in terms of what are we looking for in order to identify where we should be working or to validate those sites that we are already working on, these are sort of the three main components. We're looking at habitat networks, we're looking at ecosystem services, and we're looking at opportunity areas. And we've got a GIS component. I see my time is limited, I'm going to have to flash through these. We're looking for the best places to work, where conservation action has maximum likelihood of success to enhance ecological coherence and provide multiple benefits to people. So back to where we are. Habitat networks first of all. Okay, this is a simplified map of all of the habitat networks that we had mapped. So we've got grasslands, ponds, lowland, wetland networks, peats, and so on. And you can see that we're right in the middle there. Ecosystem services. Okay, so we mapped a number of different services. I'm going to flash through a few of these. Water purification capacity. If you want to know more about how we designed these, we have all the information for how we made these measurements. So water purification, accessible nature, so that's health and well-being, carbon storage and assets, education and knowledge services, so accessible for education, and so they be ecosystem services, and opportunity areas. So what we did was, in terms of opportunity, we looked at those areas that were within a 5-metre tidal range and were land units of a hectare or more, and that were at least 20 metres from either buildings or other infrastructure. And this is the map that it showed us. So these are all potential areas, just purely on a topographic basis. And then, so that's without ecosystem services or without habitat networks. The next slide shows us with, it's not moving on. Whoops, it moves on very, very quickly. It's you, isn't it? Where are we? Okay, so that was the previous one. So all the opportunity areas with an ecosystem services score, and the last one, that's this one here. That's with both the ecosystem services score and within habitat networks. Now the last one just zooms in and says, well, okay, that was the last map, and that's actually where we are working. So this was done backwards. So this was done. So we had the site already in the project. We ran these models, and this is what we came up with. And the proposals that we actually have in place with RSPB, so the back one, are to extend that area. So it fits very, very nicely with the models that we ran. Remember, this is not a research project, this is an active doing project. We've got to get it done within 3 years. So it's all about delivery. And so we're quite pleased that it's worked out quite like this. We've got other opportunity maps in the same area for all of these different types of habitat. And anyway, the challenges that we are facing within the project, we've got 3 years to deliver almost £2.5 million worth of work on the ground. The most difficult thing for us to do is to decide what we're looking for. What are we actually looking for? Because if you're doing a GIS-based model, you've got to know exactly what it is you're looking for. Is it the way to go? Should we be investing in all this GIS work? Should we just not be getting experts around the table or going through checklists or getting a range of maps on the table and looking at them and deciding where's the best place? Do we just look for the money? Where the money is, that's where we go and work. Data requirements and their availability. a nightmare getting licenses for the data that exists that's out there. There's a lot of open source data which is great, but there's a lot that isn't, and it's very hard getting hold of that sometimes. Computing power. Each time we run these models and store the results, we need computers the size of houses pretty much, and that's an impediment to us. And I think just the last thing is just having everybody in the project around the table agreeing that this is the way that we should be doing it, and agreeing that the parameters that we've set are the right ones. Okay, that's me. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, Paul. As you've managed to combine lots of data from multiple sources, even though you're very early on in your project, and it's great to see that you and the principles of ecological coherence